Warm welcome to you as you join us on today's episode of Tax Matters. My name is Olumuyiwa Matuloko, and with me on the episode is Christina Pius.
Hello, viewers.
On this episode of Tax Matters, Emir of KANO endorses tax payment, says it is ordained by God. Federal Inland Revenue Service and the State Board of Internal Revenue strengthen their collaboration. Taxpayer education and enlightenment gathers greater momentum as tax authorities resolve to make use of clerics, traditional rulers, community leaders, and celebrities for tax advocacy. The Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria has become a member of the Joint Tax Board, just as the Nigeria Customs Service gets set to join. Motorists get the option of choosing 3 or 5 years validity for national driver's license. These and many more are the fallouts of the just concluded 134th meeting of the Joint Tax Board, which was held in KANO between Monday the 11th and Tuesday the 12th of April 2016.
Welcome once again. From Monday 11th to Tuesday 12th of April 2016, the Joint Tax Board held its 134th quarterly meeting in the beautiful city of KANO. Activities on day 1 began with a courtesy call on the Emir of KANO, His Royal Highness Muhammad Sanusi II.
We have come to pay homage to your royal father and also to seek for your blessing. Everyone knows presently that the era of oil revenue is now history and gone, and we've been called upon to raise revenue for both the federal, state, and local governments. We have a target of close to 5 trillion naira this year, which is an increase of over 32% from previous years. But there's nothing I can tell you, Your Royal Majesty, you know more than all of us. We'd also like to have words of wisdom, of guidance. From history, our royal fathers used to be the ones that used to collect the taxes and owned everything that we have. And I believe it's still the same. We know that with your instruction, with your words of encouragement, we know that all taxpayers, both in the north and south of Nigeria, will be encouraged to do the right thing.
Emir Sanusi, who spoke through an interpreter, seized the occasion to lend his voice to the clarion call to all citizens to pay their taxes, as according to him, it is an injunction from Allah.
There are a lot of people who believe that Islamically there is no provision for taxes. He wants to call and tell the people that even during the second campaign of the Prophet, Sayyidina Abuja, taxes have been paid even at that time. So it is not new in Islam, so people should embrace it and continue to pay their taxes. I urge the people of KANO to continue paying these taxes because it is already through these taxes that achievements, social services will be rendered to the people in areas like water, roads, hospitals, and others.
After the courtesy visit, the formal opening ceremony got underway with the welcome address by the host Chairman KANO State Internal Revenue Service.
The idea for convening this forum is to provide a platform for relevant stakeholders in tax administration to exchange ideas and the need to ensure synergy in the formulation of policies aimed at improving revenue drive that will sustain the implementation of government programs and projects for overall socio-economic development of the nation.
The theme for this meeting is the imperative of transforming from oil revenue dependency to non-oil revenue sufficiency. We'd like to assure you, sir, that before we leave KANO, we will have discussed major issues concerning tax administration in Nigeria, the issue of multiplicity of taxes, and other issues that the tax-paying public may find dear to their hearts, and also we will involve strategies to ensure that the tax base within Nigeria is expanded to make all Nigerians, in line with the Constitution, pay their taxes, and also all corporate bodies. So from this year, we will rely on non-oil revenue, and if the oil price does come back, it will just be the icing on the cake.
The Executive Governor KANO State, Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, who was away in Dubai on state assignment, was ably represented at the opening ceremony by his Commissioner of Finance and Economic Development, Professor Kabiru Issa Dandago. The 134th meeting of the Joint Tax Board was an intellectual affair as two seminal papers were presented, one by Mr. Taiwo Edele, a tax expert, and the other by Professor Kabiru Dandago, the Finance Commissioner.
We don't need to remind ourselves, we know very well that for a very long time, we have relied too much on the natural resources God bless us with, which is not in itself a problem, but the problem was because we took off our eyes from everything else. And given that you have very little or no control at all over the prices of commodities, including crude oil, our nation is today struggling. And the 180 million people in our dear country, Nigeria, are all relying on those of us in this room to rescue Nigeria. So the tax to GDP ratio for Nigeria is very low, currently around 6%. And this is not a question of comparing us with US or with the UK and we say, well, but those guys are developed. No, this is comparing us with Kenya, with Ghana, with South Africa. And Kenya is doing 19%, Ghana 23%, South Africa 25%. We're doing 6%. We can't explain it to ourselves. There must be something that is wrong and we have to fix it. If you go to developed countries like Denmark, they have one of the highest in the world. 49% of their GDP is what they collect in taxes. The UK around 40%, France is 45%, and the US is 27%. Now, when you want to transform from relying on natural resources to tax revenue, there are three major pillars, in my view. Number one pillar is you must address the ease of paying taxes. You cannot, on one hand, be asking people to pay, and you then create processes that make it very difficult for them to pay. It's counterintuitive. It's contradictory. Number two, we must reform the tax system. A lot of the things we are dealing with today were stuff we inherited from the British as far back 1960. The world has moved on. Then there was not even internet itself. Imagine that. We're still using those laws today. We still have in our law something called commencement rule. When a company starts a business in Nigeria, it's like, you say you committed a crime, you want to start a business. During commencement, we levy double taxation. Who does that? Anywhere in the world, you know when companies are most vulnerable is when they start. Because there's no revenue, but there's overhead. That's even when you need to help them, not when to start applying commencement rule. We have what we call minimum tax. We say you have done business, but you have been unlucky, you've made losses. You must still pay tax to government. We give you an assessment. When people pay tax, when they have made losses, they are paying from their capital. It's like draining their blood. And the number three is there must be proper fiscal management. It should be easy for people to access tax information. We should be able to improve the tax collection by making sure that our framework for tax exemption and waivers is very clear if we must keep them. It must also be that there's transparency and accountability. I'm going to show you in the feedback from taxpayers that this is their number one concern. So what are the recommendations and the way forward to address these issues that I've highlighted? I've decided to summarize it to say, how do I increase my internally generated revenue? So that's what we really mean by non-oil. What is the one we can generate from ourselves? It has to be that one, there's a strategy for informal sector. There has to be compliance enforcement. We have to use technology and be innovative. We need to leverage intelligence and collaborate. We have to leverage global initiatives, and we need to improve tax administrations.
The concept of tax is well known, but everything is being considered as tax, every charge. And Mr. Taiwo was able to mention the reason why. People have the feeling that any payment made to government compulsorily is tax. Whereas in real sense, you have tax, you have levies, you have fees, you have charges, you have penalties, etc. And I think it was the chairman of the Joint Tax Board, this should be taken as a challenge. How do you sensitize the people to know the difference between all these items? Are they all tax? Then we should forget calling them levies, charges, fees, etc. If they are different, then we need to sensitize them to understand the differences between taxation, which is normally backed up by a specific law, and charges, levies, fines, etc., that are product of some activities of government. It is argued by many scholars and practitioners that taxation is the most durable source of revenue to government, leading to sustainable development. If we want to achieve sustainable development, then we have to take the challenge of making taxation as the key source of revenue.
Professor Dandago spoke about the dimensions of tax in real life in a place like Kano State.
In a state like Kano, we have the advantage of the second type of tax in real life. The first one, the conventional tax, which is a civil responsibility, as taking care of all these direct and indirect taxes that we mentioned, and other levies, charges, etc. But this one, zakat, which is a religious responsibility, is another way of generating revenue to close the gap between the rich and the poor. It is very, very clear in the Quran and Hadith that zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. In fact, it is rated as number 3. When you take the list of the 5 pillars of Islam, zakat is number 3. It's rated above Hajj and fasting. And the provision for zakat is that every wealthy individual whose wealth has reached a certain level is expected to pay 1/40 of the wealth for the benefit of the poor. That's all. So you can see many people that have 40 million that are not ready to pay 1 million. And when you come Kano here, you can get about 2,000 people that have more than 40 million. More than 40 million. So if each one of them will pay 1 million as zakat, as provided by the Quran and Sunnah, you can imagine the problem that you can solve using that money. Just 1 million from 4,000 people, that is 4 billion. So you provide a lot for the poor. And then apart from this zakat, there is what we call sadaqah, just to assist the poor. So in Kano and other Islamic majority states, apart from the conventional tax, which is a civil responsibility, they have zakat to exploit. And that is why some states have what they call zakat commission, just to move around asking people that are qualified for paying the zakat to pay, with a view to pleasing Allah and, of course, pleasing the immediate community.
Activities on day one continued with visits to sites of projects executed by the Kano State government, including the newly established Northwest University. Tax Matters spoke with the Finance Commissioner and the host chairman, Kano State Internal Revenue Service.
Now, what is the quantum of contribution of internally generated revenue in Kano State to these funds available to the state government right now?
Yeah, right now, the Internal Revenue Service, which has been overhauled, and it started its work in January this year, they have raised up the tax base, the total revenue collection of the state by at least 40% of what we are getting before. Before they came in, the state is not hitting 1 billion. But now they have, in the last report we have for February, they have generated about 1.5 billion naira. And it is very, very hopeful that by the end of this month, April, the amount will be at least 2 billion, if it does not exceed that. But we are at the level of laying foundation now. Yeah, they have done all the necessary arrangements for enhancing the idea of the state to meet up with the target given to them by the government. Government are giving them a target of at least 5 billion naira per month by December this year. And then by the middle of next year, 2017, they are expected to reach 10 billion naira per month.
So you have the confidence that you gradually win yourself of the monthly handouts from Abuja?
Yeah, the expectation is that by the middle of next month, as I said, the government will now be using money from the federation account for expenditure in what we call future generation account, future generation fund. That the amount to be generated by this internal revenue service should be sufficient enough to take over budgeted capital and recurrent expenditure. And so any money coming from the federation account should be seen as a windfall, which should go into future generation account.
You spoke about Zakat. Which organization administers Zakat? Is it the Board of Internal Revenue or another body?
No, we have another body. We have Zakat Commission, which is established by law to operate, to collect Zakat from all those individuals that are qualified to pay. And payment of Zakat is a religious obligation. Once your wealth reach a particular level, right now they're talking about 250,000 naira. If your wealth is 250,000 naira and above, no, per annum, you pay 1/40 of that amount as zakat, or 2.5%. You pay it zakat to the relevant authority. And that authority is to distribute it to identify beneficiaries that have been made very clear in the Quran and explained clearly in the Sunnah.
Sir, can you please educate us more on the revenue harmonization bill just passed into law in Kano State?
The MDS harmonization bill is just like TSA at federal level. It's aimed at harmonizing or consolidating all the source of revenue, including accounts, manual accounts that are with our collecting banks that are not on pay direct. We have engaged the service of SW Global after the bill has been enacted and gazetted. Now they are mandated to automate the whole process and make sure that all revenue comes from MDS go to one single account, and they are authorized MDS. Is more or less like they are exempted. But the revenue, in line with what the law says, must to come to the government corpus before it goes back, like Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and others that I actually call authorized MDS. The money comes to the government corpus within 24 hours. It goes back. It's automatic. The software has been customized to give that service.
In a chat with journalists, Mr. Babatunde Fowler dwelt on a myriad of issues around the theme of the two-day meeting.
Basically, we're here to talk about tax revenue, issues that we may be seeing in different states or different type of tax, and also to see how we can simplify the process and to make it more convenient for taxpayers to pay their taxes.
After your board, your service is thinking outside the box. Can we have an idea how you are thinking outside the box to capture more tax for the country?
Well, when you're talking about thinking about outside the box, we're doing things a bit differently. For example, we have met with all the state boards of internal revenue. Now, by the constitution, they are independent bodies, but we have agreed, we have an MOU for us to work together. Together, we have exchanged tax databases between the Federal Inland Revenue Service and also the state boards of internal revenue. And together, we have a target to at least add on at least 5 million individual taxpayers and 500,000 corporate accounts.
So for FRS this year, what is your target? Can we have an idea of what's...
Our target is 4.97 trillion.
And how achievable is this?
That's what we're talking about, expanding the tax net, making sure that the compliance level is high. For example, in VAT, we have a compliance level of under 10%. We want to make sure that we achieve at least an 80% before the end of this year.
So I have a question. So how do we address the issue of multiple taxation?
Well, the issue of multiple taxation, what we have found out among ourselves is that some of these charges are illegal charges. And some of these charges actually have to do with members who have joined an association or some individuals who are not authorized to collect revenue and set up all these little companies. Now, we met with the Inspector General of Police sometime last month, and he has assured us that he will ensure that all illegal roadblocks on all highways are dismantled, not by the police, but by these individuals who say they're collecting revenue either for the local government or collecting revenue for a state government.
So, there are indications that we had dropped in revenue as at the last quarter or 2 quarters into the last part of last year.
Yeah.
Yes. What are the factors that were responsible for this loss or drop in revenue? And what are the efforts being placed to make things better? Especially when some of us that are laymen in terms of tax, we are presuming that with the single treasury thing, we should be richer and our economy should not be dropping at this particular time.
Well, very simple. The drop in revenue is mainly due to the drop of the oil price. And once the oil price drops and the volume drops, automatically and immediately you see a drop in revenue. Now, the figures that you're seeing are the figures of the previous month that are being shared at FAC. And so our own mandate is to increase the non-oil revenue to make up for the shortfall. And that's what we intend to do.
What are the new things?
The new things, for example, is to bring in more taxpayers. Now, from the Federal Inland Revenue Service, we've already brought in close to 400,000 new taxpayers at the corporate level. Now, the states are going to give us their own figures. And if you stay around for a little while longer, you'll also see what the states have done. Because we're looking at tax administration both at the federal and state level.
In the evening, delegates were treated to dinner at the government house. On day 2, the delegates sat down to the meeting proper, which featured reviews of the activities of the board since the 133rd meeting held in Abuja in December 2015, as well as discussions on how to actualize the mandate of the JTB, which includes the harmonization of tax administration in the country. The Federal Road Safety Commission presented a brief on the introduction of driving school number plates, verification of vehicle number plates, the driving school standardization program, 5 years validation of the National Driver's License, among other things. While a delegate from the Nigerian Governors Forum came to seek collaboration between the Joint Tax Board and the Nigerian Governors Forum. The chairman of the Joint Tax Board presented his report, which covered activities of the board in recent months.
On the 8th of March, I led a delegation on a courtesy call to the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Solomon Arazi. Now, the highlights of the courtesy call were as follows. We emphasized the need to strengthen the existing working relationship between the police force and various tax authorities. We also called on support of the police in curbing multiplicity of taxes and levies resulting from activities of unauthorized persons who usually mount roadblocks on highways for the purpose of collecting taxes and levies. In response, the police commands were directed to dismantle all roadblocks mounted for the purpose of tax collection across the nation. The next is the report on registered taxpayers, state by state. And if you look at the end of it, you will find out that in terms of individuals, we only have 10 million taxpayers. Now, in terms of the IGR for 2015, on page 26, I'm glad to say that all states were able to give us figures except Ebonyi. For states who have improved considerably, I say congratulations. There are some states like Ogun that increased by 49%, and there are some states like Kwara that decreased by 73%. Now, I don't know the reason why your IGR from 1 year to another would decrease by 73%, or Imo that decreased by 48%.
At the end of it all, a communique was issued.
The JTB held its 134th meeting on the 11th and 12th April 2016 at the Taha Hotel KANO with the theme, The Imperatives of Transitioning from Oil Revenue Dependency to Non-Oil Revenue Sufficiency. The board deliberated on various issues and reached the following major decisions. That collaboration between Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, and State Internal Revenue Service, SIRS, be pursued towards harnessing full generation of tax revenue to cushion the effect of the dwindling fortune of oil revenue for economic sustainability of the country. There was a need for intensive taxpayer education and enlightenment using religious, traditional leaders.
It is our hope that the fruits of the deliberations and decisions taken at the 134th meeting of the Joint Tax Board will begin to ripen very soon, and that Nigerians will smile. We thank you for watching, and we're enjoying you to put a smile on somebody's face. From Christina, who is already smiling.
Thank you for watching. See you next week.
Have a good week ahead.